Andre Agassi, winner of 8 Grand Slams, Olympic gold, and one of the greatest returners in tennis history, was asked about Carlos Alcaraz, and his reply was something that tennis fans have been thinking, but nobody with his credibility has stated this directly. Alcaraz is a combination of all of them in one. All three. Federer's artistry, Nadal's ferocity, Djokovic's physicality and mentality. Not just pieces of each. The complete package. And once you understand what that actually means, how rare it is for one player to synthesize the best qualities of 3 different GOATs, you realize we might be watching something that's never happened before in tennis history. The quote from Agassi was precise and devastating in its implications. Speaking to the ATP ahead of the Laver Cup, he broke down exactly what he sees in Alcaraz's game. He's like a combination of all of them in one, with the RPMs he can put on the ball, the defense that he is like Novak, the feel that he is like Federer. That's not vague praise. That's specific technical analysis from someone who played against elite competition and knows what makes champions different from everyone else. And Agassi isn't alone. Patrick Mouratoglou, who coached Serena Williams to multiple Grand Slams, said almost the exact same thing. He combines the qualities of the 3 greatest players of all time. Even Djokovic himself acknowledged it after losing to Alcaraz in the 2023 Wimbledon final. He's got the best of all 3 worlds, Djokovic said. Think about that. The guy who just lost to Alcaraz is telling everyone that Carlos has combined the best elements of himself, Federer, and Nadal. That's not saltiness. That's recognition from one GOAT to a potential future GOAT. So let's break down what they're actually saying. Because combination of all 3 sounds nice, but what does it mean in practice? How does one 22-year-old have elements of 3 players who each dominated tennis for 15 plus years? Start with Federer. The comparison here is about artistry and creativity. Federer made impossible shots look routine. He had touch, feel, variety. He could hit every shot in the book and invented a few that weren't. His movement was fluid. His shot-making was beautiful. Tennis wasn't just about winning points. It was about expressing himself through the sport. Alcaraz has that same quality. The drop shots from defensive positions. The forehand winners hit while sprinting wide. The net play that shows confidence and creativity. The ability to improvise midpoint when the original plan isn't working. That's pure Federer. Patrick Mouratoglou specifically noted this. Like him, he's super aggressive and super creative, always trying to do something with the ball. The speed with which he is able to go from the back to the inside of the court, that's pure Roger. But here's what makes it special. Federer's creativity came with risk. Sometimes the drop shot didn't work. Sometimes the aggressive net approach left him exposed. The artistry had a cost. Alcaraz seems to have Federer's creativity, but with better court coverage to bail himself out when the creative shot doesn't work. That's the synthesis, taking the best part, creativity, while mitigating the weakness, occasional defensive vulnerability. The drop shot comparison is particularly revealing. Alcaraz wins 7% more points on drop shots at majors than Federer did. 7% might not sound like much, but in tennis where margins are razor thin, that's enormous. It suggests Alcaraz has not just matched Federer's touch, but potentially exceeded it. And he's doing it at 22, not at Federer's peak years of 25 to 28. Now add Nadal. The comparison here is about intensity, fighting spirit, and belief. Nadal never gave up, never stopped running, never accepted that a point was lost until the ball literally hit the ground twice. That warrior mentality, that vamos, energy, that physical commitment to every single point regardless of score, that's what separated Nadal from everyone else. Alcaraz has that. Watch him play, and count how many points he retrieves that should be unretrievable. Watch his body language after saving break points. Watch his intensity level in the 5th set of tight matches. That's Nadal's DNA in a Spanish player from the next generation. The fist pumps, the celebrations, the refusal to accept defeat, the willingness to run through walls to win points. But again, it's not just copying. Nadal's intensity, sometimes manifested as extreme topspin that was physically taxing to generate consistently. Alcaraz has the intensity without quite the same physical toll because his technique is slightly more economical. He's synthesizing the mental approach with a more sustainable physical approach. Then there's Djokovic. This is where it gets really interesting because Djokovic is still playing, still competing at high levels. And Djokovic himself is the one saying Alcaraz has elements of his game. The comparison here is about defense, flexibility, and mental strength. Djokovic's superpower was turning defense into offense. He could retrieve impossible shots, then immediately counterattack and put opponents on the defensive. His flexibility allowed him to reach balls nobody else could reach, from positions nobody else could maintain. And his mental strength in crucial moments, the ability to raise his level when it mattered most, defined his career. Agassi specifically cited this. The defense that he is like Novak. That's not just about getting to balls. It's about what you do with them once you get there. Alcaraz doesn't just retrieve, he counterattacks. He turns defensive positions into offensive opportunities within the same shot. That's Djokovic's skill, and Alcaraz has it at 22. The serve comparison is also telling. Alcaraz recently adjusted his serve motion, and commentators immediately noted it looked like Djokovic's serve. Even Djokovic joked about it, sending Alcaraz a message. "Well, you're going to have to pay me for the serve before the season starts." Alcaraz laughed about it, but acknowledged the similarity. He's actively learning from Djokovic and incorporating those elements into his game. But here's the crucial insight. The big three each had specific weaknesses, especially early in their careers. Federer's backhand was vulnerable to heavy topspin. Nadal's serve was inconsistent early in his career. Djokovic struggled on faster surfaces initially. They each worked to shore up those weaknesses over time, becoming more complete players. But they started with gaps. Alcaraz seems to have started with fewer gaps, because he's learned from all three simultaneously. He watched them identify and fix their weaknesses over 15+ years, and he's incorporated those fixes from the beginning of his career. That's the advantage of coming after the big three. You can learn from their entire developmental arc, not just their peaks. Patrick Mouratoglou highlighted this completeness. His game combines incredible power and an incredible touch. Normally, we have one or the other. He has both, and I think it's unheard of at this point. In the same way that I've never seen a 19-year-old player so complete. That word, complete, is crucial. Because what made the big three special wasn't just their individual peaks, but how complete they became. They had no weaknesses. You couldn't target their backhand or their serve or their movement or their mental game because everything was elite. Alcaraz has reached that completeness at 22, which is terrifying for everyone else on tour. The statistical backing for these claims is also compelling. By age 21, Alcaraz had won 4 Grand Slams. Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer combined for 4 Grand Slams by that age. Alcaraz matched all 3 of them combined. That's not just talent. That's the synthesis of their approaches applied more efficiently. Alcaraz needed just 60 Grand Slam matches to reach 50 victories at majors. That matched Nadal's record exactly. Federer needed 68 matches. Djokovic needed 64. So Alcaraz is tracking at the fast end of the big three's developmental curve, not behind it. The head-to-head records are also revealing. Alcaraz beat Nadal and Djokovic when he was still a teenager. He never got to face Federer because Roger retired before they could meet. But the consensus is the matchup would have been competitive given Alcaraz's variety and aggression. So he's already proven he can beat 2 of the big 3, and he did it before they declined significantly due to age. But the synthesis goes deeper than just shots and stats. It's about mindset and approach to competition. Federer loved the artistry of tennis, the beauty of the sport. Nadal loved the battle, the war on court. Djokovic loved the challenge of being the best, the pursuit of records and excellence. Alcaraz seems to love all 3 things. He talks about wanting to play beautiful tennis. He talks about fighting and never giving up. He talks about being number 1 and winning Grand Slams. That combination of motivations, aesthetic, competitive, achievement-oriented, is what drove the big 3 collectively. And Alcaraz has all 3 simultaneously. The coaching dimension is also significant. Alcaraz's development team has deliberately studied the big 3 and incorporated lessons from each. His former coach Juan Carlos Ferrero played during their era and learned from watching them. His current coach Samuel Lopez has continued that approach, constantly analyzing what made the big 3 great and how to incorporate those elements into Alcaraz's game without losing his natural instincts. That's sophisticated player development. Most coaches try to impose a specific system, but Alcaraz's team has taken a synthesis approach, preserve his natural creativity and aggression while adding the technical refinements, tactical awareness, and mental frameworks that made the big 3 dominant. The physical training is also a synthesis. Alcaraz has Nadal's explosiveness and conditioning, but he also has Djokovic's flexibility and injury prevention protocols. And he has Federer's efficiency of movement that prevents unnecessary energy expenditure. His fitness team has clearly studied all three and built a training program that captures the best of each approach. There are differences, of course. Alcaraz is more aggressive than any of the big three were at his age. He takes more risks. He goes for bigger shots earlier in points. That's partly his personality, but also partly the evolution of tennis. The sport rewards aggression more now than it did 15 years ago due to equipment and court speed changes. Alcaraz has also publicly pushed back on the comparisons, insisting he's his own player. "I do not define myself by anyone else," he said. "I'm simply 100% Alcaraz." That's psychologically healthy. You don't want to be so focused on comparisons that you lose your identity. But the comparisons persist because they're accurate. Whether Alcaraz wants to acknowledge it or not, he objectively has elements of all three in his game. The question is whether this synthesis can be sustained over a career. Because one challenge the big three faced was adaptation. As their bodies aged, they had to adjust their games. Federer became more efficient. Nadal developed his serve. Djokovic improved his net game. Those adaptations took time and weren't always successful. Alcaraz might face the same challenge. As he gets older, will the aggressive creativity still work? Will his body hold up to Nadal-level intensity for 15 years? Will he maintain Djokovic-level mental strength through injuries and slumps? Those are unknowns. But the advantage of having synthesized all three approaches is flexibility. If one element stops working, he has two others to rely on. If his body can't sustain Nadal-level intensity at age 30, he can lean more on Federer-style artistry. If his shot-making becomes less consistent, he can lean on Djokovic-style defense. That versatility might actually make him more adaptable than any of the big three were individually. The rivalry with Jannik Sinner adds another layer. Because Sinner represents a different synthesis, more Djokovic-like with his baseline consistency and mental strength, but without as much of the Federer creativity or Nadal intensity. The contrast between Alcaraz's complete synthesis and Sinner's more focused approach is one of the defining dynamics of current men's tennis. And right now, Alcaraz's synthesis is winning. He's beaten Sinner 5 straight times. He's winning on all surfaces. He's dominating tournaments from start to finish. The completeness is proving to be a decisive advantage at the elite level. The commercial and cultural impact of being the big three in one person is also significant. Because tennis fans spent 15 years debating who was better among Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. Those debates were passionate and sometimes divisive. But if Alcaraz genuinely has elements of all three, he could unify the fan base in ways the big three never could. Federer fans see the artistry. Nadal fans see the fight. Djokovic fans see the mental strength and flexibility. Everyone can see something they love in Alcaraz's game. That universal appeal is rare in tennis. Usually players appeal to specific demographics or stylistic preferences. But a player who synthesizes all three goats appeals to everyone. That makes Alcaraz potentially the most marketable player in tennis history if he sustains this level for years. The specific technical elements of each big three member that appear in Alcaraz's game deserve deeper examination. Because this isn't just about general qualities like artistry or intensity. There are specific shots, patterns, and tactical approaches that can be traced directly to each of the legends. From Federer, Alcaraz has adopted the inside-out forehand as a primary weapon for opening up the court. Federer used this shot to create space and angles that forced opponents wide, then punished them with winners to the open court. Alcaraz does the exact same thing. He also has Federer's willingness to come to net behind approach shots, not just on short balls, but on well-struck ground strokes that put opponents on the defensive. That aggressive transition game was Federer's signature, and Alcaraz has made it his own. The serve and volley on second serves is another Federer element. Most modern players never serve and volley on second serve because it's seen as too risky. But Federer did it to keep opponents off balance and show them he wasn't afraid to take chances. Alcaraz does it too, especially on big points, and with similar success rates. That tactical courage comes directly from studying Federer's playbook. From Nadal, Alcaraz has taken the defensive forehand lasso, the extreme topspin shot hit while running wide or back that somehow lands deep and kicks up high, neutralizing what should have been a winning shot from the opponent. Nadal invented this shot out of necessity, needing a way to defend against big hitters without just slicing and hoping. Alcaraz has refined it, using slightly less extreme spin, but generating it more quickly, which gives opponents even less time to capitalize. The physical running forehand is another Nadal trademark that Alcaraz has mastered. Most players, when running full speed, can only defend. They hit the ball back and hope to stay in the point. Nadal could hit winners while running full speed, using his legs to generate power, even when his upper body was off balance. Alcaraz does the same thing, maybe even better, because he's slightly faster and more explosive in his first step. The mental approach to breakpoints is pure Nadal too. Nadal raised his level on the biggest points, playing his best tennis when it mattered most. Statistics showed he won breakpoints at higher percentages than his overall win rate, which is almost impossible to do. Alcaraz shows the same pattern. When facing breakpoint, his focus intensifies and his shot selection becomes even more aggressive. That's learned behavior from watching Nadal clutch crucial games throughout his career. From Djokovic, the most obvious adoption is the return position. Djokovic revolutionized returning by standing inside the baseline on second serves, and even on some first serves, taking time away from opponents and immediately putting them on defense. Alcaraz has taken that even further, standing as close or closer than Djokovic did, and using his quickness to handle the pace. The defensive slide on hard courts is another Djokovic innovation that Alcaraz has incorporated. Before Djokovic, players only slid on clay. But Djokovic brought clay court sliding to hard courts, using it to change direction quickly and reach balls that should have been winners. Alcaraz slides even more dramatically than Djokovic did, sometimes doing full splits while tracking down drop shots. That defensive flexibility comes straight from the Djokovic playbook. The backhand down the line, as a surprise counterattack, is also Djokovic-influenced. Most players hit cross-court backhands when defending because it's safer and more natural. But Djokovic would suddenly rip a backhand down the line from a defensive position, catching opponents off guard and winning the point outright. Alcaraz uses this pattern constantly, especially when opponents are camping in the cross-court corner, expecting the safe shot. But here's what makes the synthesis special. Alcaraz doesn't just copy these elements. He combines them in ways the big three never could because they didn't have each other's skills. For example, Alcaraz might start a point with a Federer-style serve and volley, transition to Nadal-style defensive running, then finish with a Djokovic-style backhand down the line. That combination of skills within one point is something none of the big three could do, because each was more specialized. The tactical flexibility this creates is enormous. Against power players, Alcaraz can use Djokovic's defense and Nadal's counterpunching. Against consistent baseliners, he can use Federer's creativity and net play. Against players who struggle with pace, he can use raw power from both wings. Against players who don't move well, he can use drop shots and angles. He has tactical answers for every type of opponent because he synthesized tools from 3 different champions who each dominated different types of players. The training methodology that created this synthesis is also worth examining, because you don't just wake up one day with elements of 3 different GOATs in your game. This required intentional study and deliberate practice over many years. Juan Carlos Ferrero, Alcaraz's former coach, played during the Big Three era and lost to all of them multiple times. He understood intimately what made each one special. When coaching young Alcaraz, Ferrero specifically showed him tape of all 3 and broke down what they did better than everyone else. That early education gave Alcaraz the framework to understand greatness before he was even on tour. The practice drills were also designed to incorporate elements from each. Ferrero had Alcaraz practice Federer-style transition play by requiring him to come to net at least once per point in certain drills. He had him practice Nadal-style defense by having hitting partners hit winners that Alcaraz had to somehow retrieve and neutralize. He had him practice Djokovic-style flexibility by doing movement drills that emphasized sliding and recovering from extreme positions. That comprehensive training approach is rare. Most coaches focus on their players' natural strengths and try to optimize those. But Ferrero took a different approach. Assume Alcaraz can learn anything and teach him the best elements from the 3 best players ever. That ambition in coaching is part of why the synthesis worked. Samuel Lopez, who took over as head coach after Ferrero, has continued this approach while adding his own innovations. Lopez has specifically worked on making Alcaraz's serve more like Djokovic's. Higher percentage, more placement-oriented, better kick on the second serve. That's a direct attempt to incorporate a Djokovic element that Alcaraz didn't have as strongly early in his career. The mental coaching from sports psychologist Josefina Cutillas also draws from all 3 legends. She studies how Federer stayed calm under pressure, how Nadal channeled intensity into focus rather than anxiety, and how Djokovic maintained belief even when losing. Those mental frameworks are then adapted to Alcaraz's personality and circumstances, creating a mental game that has elements of all three, but is distinctly his own. The physical training regimen borrows from all three as well. Juanjo Moreno, Alcaraz's fitness trainer, has studied the conditioning programs that kept Nadal explosive for 20 years, the flexibility training that allowed Djokovic to move like no one else, and the efficiency work that let Federer play into his late 30s. That synthesis of physical training philosophies is designed to give Alcaraz the endurance of Nadal, the flexibility of Djokovic, and the longevity of Federer. The nutrition and recovery protocols are similarly comprehensive. Taking lessons from Djokovic's gluten-free diet that transformed his stamina, Nadal's focus on injury prevention through consistent routines, and Federer's ability to peak at major tournaments rather than grinding every week. All of these elements have been studied and adapted for Alcaraz's specific needs. But the biggest question is sustainability. Because synthesizing three different approaches sounds great in theory, but can one player actually maintain all of those elements over a 15-year career? The big three each focused on their core strengths and added supplementary skills over time. Alcaraz is trying to do everything at once from the beginning. That might lead to faster early success, but could also lead to burnout or confusion about identity. The injury history is already showing some warning signs. Alcaraz has dealt with hamstring issues, abdominal problems, and foot injuries. That's concerning for a 22-year-old because it suggests his body might be struggling with the physical demands of playing this complete, aggressive style constantly. Nadal's body eventually broke down from similar intensity. Will Alcaraz face the same fate? The mental load is also worth considering. Playing like Federer requires constant creative thinking. Playing like Nadal requires constant emotional intensity. Playing like Djokovic requires constant tactical awareness and adjustment. Doing all three simultaneously is mentally exhausting. Can Alcaraz sustain that mental effort for hours every match, multiple times per week, for years? These are legitimate questions without answers yet. We're watching the experiment in real time. If Alcaraz stays healthy and maintains this level for another decade, the synthesis will be proven successful. If he burns out or gets injured frequently, or loses his identity, trying to be everything to everyone, then the synthesis will be seen as too ambitious. What do you think? Is Alcaraz really a synthesis of the big three? Or is this just hype from legends who want to believe the next generation can match their era? Can one player actually combine the best of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep analysis of what makes Alcaraz special, hit that subscribe button. We're breaking down every dimension of his game as he potentially writes the next chapter of tennis history. See you in the next one.